Do you know what I like most about chess? That every game is different from the last. So when we sit down in front of the board, no one, absolutely no one, is able to foresee what is going to happen in that game. And we will have to think for ourselves how to reach victory. What I'm going to show you today is really going to make you enjoy it a lot, because you already know that I always do the research work to bring you the best openings, the best games, to analyze them on this channel. We start with this game that was played in the Olympiad with knight f3 from the white pieces. As you can see, an opening, which is called the ready opening, which perhaps isn't the most popular in the world, especially among amateurs, since we are used to playing either king's pawn or queen's pawn. The idea behind the move knight f3 is that it is very flexible, and we can adapt to whatever our opponent responds with. This game continued with d5. The white player played g3, fianchettoing their bishop. They didn't want any trouble for the moment. Knight f3, bishop g2. As I was telling you in the introduction, if someone is starting to watch this game, they might think this game is going to be very slow, boring, perhaps very peaceful, because they are locking things up here on the king side. However, as we have said, nobody knows how a chess game is going to end when it begins. The game continues in the following way. g6. The player with the black pieces does the same. c4, striking the setter immediately. You already know that the best weapon to strike the d-pawn is always the c-pawn. Keep that well in mind. c6 to defend. And now the player with the white pieces decides the following. I'm going to play b3, because that way I'm going to face off my dark squared bishops. In this case, white is opting for a double fianchetto scheme. You already know that when the bishops come out, either to g2 or b2, it's called fianchettoing the bishop. The game continues in the following way. Bishop g7, and the player with the white pieces must quickly play bishop b2. Why? Because if not, there are some very, very strong discovered attacks threatening the rook on a 1. Therefore, bishop b2, white is in time, black castles, and white castles. You already know this. I'm going through this a little bit faster because where the real fun and maximum enjoyment is going to be is starting from the next moves. Black realizes, and this is a very good idea, what I'm about to say, that white has a chain pawn structure here, and they should go and break it with a 5. This move is preparing a possible a4 in the future, destroying this pawn chain and creating loose weaknesses, which is very interesting for being able to pressure them later. Besides, this a5 is serving another function. Do you know what it is? To slow down the possible expansion of white's pieces a little bit. Look at everything we're learning in a single game. White's idea was the following. I'm going to play knight c3, and look at what a beautiful move by the black player, who took advantage of the fact that the bishop on b2 is undefended. Careful, many times you're thinking, well, it's undefended, but it can be attacked. Chess has its wonders. Pay attention to this move. Knight e4. What does this knight do with it? Logically, threatening this knight, but the thing is, the knight on c3 can't capture, because precisely here, it would be taken for granted that the bishop on b2 would be falling, right? So, white must react with a move that isn't knight takes knight, and they do it in the following way. Knight f4. Let me explain to you why this is such a good idea. You can take these strategic concepts to your own games, you know? What the player with the white pieces is doing now is challenging the two fianchettoed bishops. But be careful, the black fianchettoed bishop is more important than the white one. Why? Because it's the defender of the castle position. If this bishop disappears, which it is going to because it doesn't have a pleasant exit, imagine now that the only exit is this one right here. This bishop would be quite out of play, and white could dominate this entire diagonal with the light squared bishop. That's why what the black player does is exchange this bishop for b2, and knight takes b2. Pay attention to this. Now the black castled position is going to suffer a lot, and I'm going to teach you in this class how to take advantage when an opponent's castled position has advanced one of its pawns. What problem exists here? That many weaknesses have been created, because since the pawns are on light squares, the dark squares have become extremely weak. Therefore, the game continues in the following way. Knight d7, d3, threatening the knight. It wouldn't be a good idea. I'm sure many of you are thinking about knight c3 here. it wouldn't be a good idea at all, because simply with the move, for example, queen d2, this knight would be completely trapped and couldn't be saved. So be careful about walking into the lion's den, as it often has negative consequences. Knight f6, and now, black is threatening something. Do you know what they are threatening? It's nothing tactical, but rather a strategic threat, taking control of the center. Haven't we said many times on this channel how important it is to control the center? What is black threatening? e5, do you see? Or can we prevent? Well, with d4, placing a pawn of our own in the center, and also preventing the black pieces from doing so. A very, very good move. Very well, black must develop this bishop. They can't go this way, so they play b6 to be able to develop it along this other smaller diagonal here. Rook c1, a great move, because it threatens to open up with d5. And also, so that this rook ends up occupying the open file all by itself. You already know that a rook on an open file is a true attacking weapon that is very difficult to stop. The game continues with bishop b7, knight d3. Both knights are vying to defend one of the best squares in the position, which is the central square d5. You already know that whoever controls the center controls the game, and now this d5 point is controlled by a pawn and by both knights. Therefore, the black pieces are gonna have a pretty hard time giving it up here. Rook c8. Black does exactly the same thing as white. They don't want to fall behind on that file. And now the f knight moves to e5. Spectacular move. The idea is that this knight has tremendous power here, so black tries to eliminate it. What is the most logical move here? Capturing with the knight. What did the white pieces do with very good judgment? Capturing with the pawn. Although, if you ask your inhuman friends, the machines, they'll probably tell you that the best move is knight takes knight, establishing a central knight on the e5 outpost without doubling pawns. The move d takes e5 has a strategic concept that makes us at least consider it. The idea is that when we place a wedge on e5, those of you who enjoy reading chess books have probably seen this concept more than once, the wedge on e5, it's because it eliminates the best defender of the castled position. The best defender of the castled position is the knight on f6, not only because it defends the h7 square, but because it also defends the entry points both via h5 and g4. Therefore, now after the knight's retreat, this point here can be reinforced, for example in the future with f4, and it will remain very strong with the idea that the knight can never return to defend the castled position. Therefore, logically, this move of d takes e5 had to be considered. You understand it? Very interesting, right? Queen d2, with ideas of entering with the queen through the dark squares. Do you see? It's very interesting when the defending bishop is gone to try to enter with our pieces through here. Also, when you only have one bishop and it's a light squared one, try to place the queen on dark squares, because that way, between the two, you'll cover all the squares on the board. This is a question you ask me very frequently. I know that when I develop all the pieces, I should develop the queen to connect the rooks. However, I never know where to develop her. In this case, it would be extremely simple. We have two squares, c2 and d2. One is white and the other is black. Therefore, logically, since the bishop is white, we'll develop her to d2. And besides, if we include the point that we want to enter through h6, even more so. The idea is that here now, logically, black cannot just sit idle without doing absolutely anything, because the threats are very significant. Entering with the queen, fortifying the center with f4. The white position is truly enviable, therefore they must react, and the black pieces do it very well. They are really playing a fabulous game, but you are going to see that there will be a mistake that will cause their total demise. The idea is that this d takes c4 is at least leaving some space for the player with the black pieces to maneuver. How would you capture? With the pawn or with the rook? The correct answer is to capture with the rook, because if we capture with the pawn, this c-pawn would be left completely isolated and would be a very easy target for attack. Furthermore, the rook would be completely blocked by the pawn. Therefore, without a doubt, capturing with the rook is the best option we currently have. Not only because of everything I've mentioned, but also because it can be incorporated into the attack, for example, via h4. The idea is that when we move out into the middle of the battlefield with the queen and the rooks, which are the heavy pieces, we must keep something very important in mind, that they cannot be easily attacked. In this case, for example, they could attack it with this move, but this would be extremely bad, since they would be giving us plenty of time to play rook h4 and queen h6. As you can see, the checkmate would be completely unstoppable. Therefore, they absolutely must do something. And black, with exceptional judgment, executes a tactical maneuver that is honestly very beautiful. Knight takes e5. They aren't just giving away the knight because they're taking advantage of the fact that it's completely pinned by the queen from d8. Right now, this queen, since it is undefended, is being attacked by X-ray from the black queen. So be careful, because here black has found a good solution to win a pawn and to eliminate the wedge on e5. And not only that, but they're also threatening our major pieces. In this case, they're threatening our rook. But, well, the player with the white pieces had this well anticipated. They sacrificed the pawn on purpose in exchange for the attack. Rook h4. How beautiful, right? Many of you probably want to watch the game more than once. I recommend that you save it, because otherwise you won't know how to find it later. Therefore, you can save it down here to watch it as many times as you need. The idea now is obvious, right? What does white want to do? Come in with the queen and try to deliver checkmate on h7. Therefore, there is only one possible move to stop this, and that is h5. Anything else loses on the spot. That's understood, right? Very well. They continue the attack with rook d1 in such a way that now they are indeed threatening knight takes knight because the queen is already defended. Therefore, black here makes the move knight takes d3. What move would you make here? Well, I'm sure most of you are hesitating between capturing with the queen and capturing with the pawn. The truth is that neither of them is good. If we capture with the queen, we are down a pawn, and then they would trade queens, and we would end up in an endgame a pawn down, which is very negative when there are few pieces left on the board. On the other hand, capturing with the pawn would also be a bad idea, because we would simply be left with this isolated pawn, which would be extremely easy to attack with the rooks and the queen down the d-file head-on. You already know that to attack an isolated pawn, the best way is always head-on. Therefore, here, if I'm not going to recapture the knight with the queen, and I'm not going to recapture it with the pawn, what do? Am I down a piece? No, because now, simply by moving the queen away, for example with queen to h6, we are going to recapture the knight anyway, taking advantage of the fact that the knight is completely pinned to the rook and threatened by the pawn. Therefore, they can't do anything to save that knight. Queen to d6, rook takes d3. As you can see here, they've already recovered the piece. White is down a pawn, but in exchange, they have a very good initiative. Therefore, the game is quite balanced. One side has extra material, and the other has, extra initiative. What is best for white? To launch a lethal attack. What is best for black? For nothing to happen so that they can reach an endgame with an extra pawn. The game continues with queen to f6, retreating the threatened queen. And now, bishop to e4. Logically, what the player with the white pieces is doing, you see what it is, right? Trying to bring all the pieces into the attack, understanding exactly what the game requires. It is very important that you understand what the game requires. When we open the Chess Teacher Academy, where you'll be able to take classes every week, you'll start to understand all these things, although for the moment, the Academy isn't open. But mind you, it's not far off. It's the first time I've mentioned it on the channel, so if you're watching this video, you're getting the scoop. The idea here is that black is looking for some type of counterplay with bishop to a6. The best move in the position activates a bishop that wasn't doing anything and also threatens our rook. But the important thing isn't just that it threatens the rook, but that it also creates very strong threats. Many of you are probably thinking the following. Well, I'll move it away and attack the queen. This is great for me. You would lose the game on the spot. It would follow, for example, queen to a1, check, the king moves away, the bishop captures on e2. Not only is the rook being threatened, but there is also checkmate on f1, and this is impossible to stop, so you would be making an extremely serious mistake. Therefore, here, after this move, bishop to a6, the rook cannot come to f3. Do you see the malice behind this bishop to a6 move? You must check everything before moving, even if the moves seem obvious. Therefore, you have to defend this e2 pawn, and you have to move the rook. Therefore, rook to e3 seems logically to be the best move in the position. Queen to g7. What would you do if you were in the shoes of the player with the white pieces? Would you trade queens or not? Of course not. That would be a serious mistake. If we trade queens, we will be left without an attack, and therefore we will lose the endgame being down a pawn. Furthermore, for all of you who are more professional or want to improve quite a bit more, you must understand in these types of positions, when some kind of trade is proposed to reach an endgame, to look at the position in terms of pawn structures. remove all the pieces. We'll see 4 against 4 here, nothing out of the ordinary, but 3 against 2? It's very easy for black to get a passed pawn here. Do you see it? This 3 against 2. Therefore, with the trades, they would create a passed pawn. We don't want to trade queens at all. It makes sense, right? Queen g5. The crook activates on the open file on d1, on d8. You know that open files are extremely good for rooks. And here the black player has made a concession. He said, well, if you want, take the pawn back. I'm giving it to you again. It's not a pawn sacrifice as such because I'm simply giving it back to you, but in exchange, what I'm doing is entering through the back rank with the rook and queen, and you're going to have a very hard time. Logically, if you're white, I suppose, they thought for a good while and decided to capture the pawn on e7, accepting the sacrifice. Impressive. This sacrifice as such, or pawn giveaway, white does very well to accept it. Why? Because now they have recovered the material and have a very good plan to get out of the entry of black's offensive pieces. King g2, the queen enters on a1 with apparently deadly threats, right? With rook g1 and all that. And do you know what move the player with the white pieces makes here? Cold-blooded, huh? Bishop takes c6, wins a pawn. I'll explain why. The idea for white, I assure you, isn't to win a pawn just to be up a pawn, because you can already see that black's attack is devastating, but rather they understand that in this game, the winner will be whoever manages to carry out their devastating attack first, right? Therefore, here they realize one thing. If white wants to carry out a devastating attack, it's key to dominate this diagonal here with this bishop, so that this king is left completely out of play. You'll see that this is extremely important, you'll see. Therefore, they eliminate the pawn on c6, not to win a pawn, but so that now this d5 square is already enabled. You understand, right? The game continues here because now comes the best part. Rook g1, check, the king escapes to f3, and probably, you're thinking the same thing as me. The move queen f1, which is what the black pieces used, seems devastating, doesn't it? The queen enters on g2. This king is probably going to be left with no escape. But here, the white pieces made a move that still gives me goosebumps. A move that the player with the white pieces probably didn't expect at all. And I would love to see the look on their face when the white player made the move king f4. Moving the king toward the center of the board? Impressive, isn't it, friends? And on top of that, giving away this f2 pawn, and with check too. They have the same material again, but now it seems like black has a devastating attack. The white king is in the center. Do you know what white's plan was? And it's a devastating plan that can no longer be stopped. King g5. And the idea is to come and attack with the king, king h6, and make the checkmate unstoppable. What do you think of this? Have you ever seen an attack like this? Incredible, right? Right now, the threat is obvious. King h6, and I assure you that the checkmate here would be completely unstoppable. For example, if black now decides to make a move that doesn't do anything, like, I don't know, bishop c8, just to say something, the king would simply enter through h6, and then the queen, for example, could also come in here, the rooks too, and he would be completely unstoppable. And that is why black, very wisely, plays king g7. What's the idea? That even now, white is winning. Pay attention. Rook f4, attacking the queen and also applying pressure on the f7 point. The queen captures on h2. At this moment, we don't care if they capture an extra pawn because we want to deliver checkmate. Queen f6, check, king h7, and here comes a spectacular bombshell that you want to, if you want, you can pause the video to try and find it. For those of you who are a bit more experienced, and for those who aren't, it's also great to pause and think. Even if you don't find it, your brain has tried to look for variations, and later when you see the solution, you'll understand why it's the solution, and you'll learn it much better because you've already done the exercise of thinking. Remember here that they are threatening rook takes check, and this would likely be lethal. Therefore, we must act with great force, with checks. The beast of a move is queen takes g6, sacrificing the queen. Logically, the queen can't be captured because the following would happen. If pawn takes, first would come rook 7 check. If the king comes here, it would be mate. And if the king comes to g8, importantly, the bishop can be placed on d5. You remember, right? The pawn. And now, when the king moves away, rook to f8 is checkmate. Do you see it? Therefore, this queen cannot be captured. What must the black pieces do here then? Well, there's no other choice but to move the king away. But when the king moved away, simply put, the white pieces finished with a wonderful move, which was the following: king to h6. And the checkmate is completely unstoppable, both on g7 and h7. And if they decide to take the queen, it would be followed by rook takes f8, checkmate. What'd you think? Impressive or not? Brilliant. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and you'll get a free video every day. And if you want more free content, you can subscribe to the newsletter, which I'll leave for you down here in the description, where every Sunday, I'll upload exclusive content just for subscribers and I'll send it to you by email. I hope you loved this video. Leave a big like if you want more videos like this, and we'll see each other tomorrow in the next one, friends. Bye.